John Belushi died of something called a speedball. Okay. Now, what a speedball is when you do cocaine and you do heroin.
Oh.
Now, why would anyone do that? Well, you do cocaine because it's an upper, so it gets you kind of going. And then you get too high, so you do heroin, and that's a downer, and it brings you down.
LabCoatAgents, I am Shawn Kerley, joined here by none other than Mr. Brian Stevens with the National Real Estate Post, coming to you our monthly installment of what the hell's going on in the mortgage market, or in our market per se. Brian, we got some interesting talking points here, and we have to start off with, of course, inventory. Everyone, this has been a talking point for years now. So like 2020, people were saying, oh my goodness, inventory is low. 2021 comes around like, oh my goodness, inventory is even worse off. 2022 rolls, it says, hold my beer. I'll show you guys something. Last month, or Zillow just came out with a report that in February, there was only 729,000 listings on market. NAR is saying that there's more pain with inventory shortage to be coming. But you came across a report on one of your last week's shows stating that LendingTree reports that there's 16 million homes that are sitting vacant. Now, in this 16 million includes current houses that are on market, second homes, houses for rent. But there's also Fannie and Freddie have like an inventory list of houses that they've either, foreclosed on, but are just sitting. So I want you to kind of explain why won't they release these?
It's Mr. T playing the role of Clubber Lang in Rocky 3. I predict more pain, more pain. I'm dating myself there a little bit. Yeah, it really is quite the conundrum, and there's really no end in sight. The whole idea is there's 16,000 houses out there that are vacant for some reason. We've got second homes which are sitting vacant. We have properties that are listed, properties that are pending, properties that are actually foreclosed on. Foreclosures are up fourfold what they were just a couple of months ago, even though the number is remarkably low. I think we went from 4,100 to 28,000. Again, it is a fraction of a fraction percent, but it is trending in the right direction. And I say the right direction because foreclosures just mean more inventory. And I kind of like the idea of people living in houses that actually make the payment on those houses, because then they pay their taxes and they support our communities. Let's get rid of the people in these houses who haven't been making their payments, and let's replace them with people who will make those payments. Just a funny side note, and I'll jump into the whole inventory issue. But think about this. According to the FHFA, over 30% of the people who went into forbearance 2 years ago were not in a position to be able to make those payments at all. That's a remarkably high number, okay? Meaning those foreclosures or those forced sales were inevitable 2.5 years ago. And then they got this really wonderful gift called COVID-19. And COVID-19 came with a really bad policy that said anybody can forbear for any reason whatsoever without proving hardship or pre-existing conditions even. And so what happened is these people got to stay in these houses over the next 2.5 years. Now, we went into this really remarkable recession, but strangely, oddly, what has happened in this last recession, which has never happened in the history of recessions in the United States, is property values were skyrocketing when the rest of the economy was in this horrible recession. These 2 points need to reconcile themselves because they don't make any sense. They don't make any sense at all. But anyways, as property values were skyrocketing for those 2 years when people were in forbearance, how much equity did they gain? It's really amazing. So now we're going to put these people who are in forbearance are coming out with modifications, which means we're going to forgive all the unpaid interest. We're going to lower their interest rate. We're going to possibly chop down what their principal balance is. And at the same time, they've gained 25 to 45% equity in their property. And that comes to the tune of hundreds of thousands of dollars. We are literally paying these massive amounts of money for people not to make their payments. It's a remarkable way to really kind of reward, in some cases, irresponsible behavior. And I find that whole thing absolutely maddening. So the idea that more foreclosures might be on the horizon, I think, frankly, is probably a pretty decent thing, because we need the inventory more than we need to reward people who didn't make their payments. Only caveat here, people, when they could have, but they chose not to because of spending habits.
Yeah.
Now, when we look at some of these properties out there, there's a massive shadow inventory, and there's always been a shadow inventory with the GSEs. It might kind of surprise you to hear that some of that shadow inventory, I swear, it goes back to 2008, 2009, 2010, when we had our previous recession. All of those properties didn't necessarily get sold. Keep in mind, when we had the last massive recession, 2008, 9, and 10, the GSEs, the government-sponsored enterprises, Fannie and Freddie, were ill-equipped to deal with this. They were trying to keep their head above water. Remember, they took the biggest payout from the Treasury in the history of the world. They've been in conservatorship longer than anybody in the history of the world. They weren't prepared to deal with the type of inventory and problems that they had, which were absolutely catastrophic and almost sunk the 80-year history of Fannie Mae. So what's happened was they had to, what they ended up doing back then is they would take these houses, these block homes, and they would sell them off in bulk to hedge funds. Oh, you want it? No, we're not selling houses one at a time here. We're going to sell houses hundreds at a time to folks.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you remember when we had like those 5-star events, and we had, the asset managers and, you'd get a real estate agent who'd have like 200 listings, and then no other agent in the MLS had any listings. That was a sign of an unhealthy real estate market. We didn't understand how to deal with the massive amounts of inventory that we had. Those problems still persisted today, strangely enough. There are still houses out there that are owned by the government-sponsored enterprises that could go on the market right now, and absolutely should. Anything that we can do to relieve the type of tensions that we have in our housing market would be very, very welcome, because when you consider that housing starts are down, housing completions are down, new family formations are through the roof right now, meaning our demand is outpacing our supply twofold of what it was even a couple of years ago, meaning what we're seeing right now is going to get worse before it gets better. Now, everyone's talking about how buying real estate is a hedge against inflation. Remember a moment ago when I told you that these people lived in these houses for 2.5 years during one of the biggest recessions we've ever had, yet property values continued to skyrocket, and these 2 points don't reconcile with each other?
Yep.
Well, they don't reconcile with each other. The only reason they do reconcile with each other, is because of all the trillions of dollars that we added into our economy. So in the middle of a recession, we kept the spigots open in terms of the money that we are introducing into our economy. Every dollar that we introduced into our economy devalued every existing dollar.
Mm-hmm.
So when we add $3 trillion, $4 trillion, $5 trillion into an economy that is basically 7 of the $15 trillion that the world has to offer right now, we are diluting dollars by a full 1/3%. So it stands to reason, with or without a war over in Ukraine right now, that this was inevitable. And this is really the reconciliation of what we did to prop up our economy a couple of years ago when COVID hit, and we're paying for it right now. How our politicians are dealing with our economy these last couple of years is kind of how alcoholics deal with a hangover.
Just add more.
You can either stop drinking and just bite the bullet and get through it, or you can just keep drinking and you could go ahead and prolong what the inevitable is, and that's going to be the hangover. And since we're on the topic of drugs and alcohol here, I'm going to give you another analogy.
Okay.
So John Belushi died of something called a speedball. Okay. Now what a speedball is when you do cocaine and you do heroin.
Oh.
Now, why would anyone do that? Well, you do cocaine because it's an upper, so it gets you kind of going. And then you get too high, so you do heroin, and that's a downer, and it brings you down. Or you do heroin first, and you're almost going to fall asleep, so you got to do cocaine to get you back up. So you're doing uppers and downers at the same time. And what happens to Mr. Hart when you start giving it mixed messages of uppers and downers? That's right. It says, I don't like you anymore, and it stops working. It quits. Well, we've done the same thing with our economy, haven't we? We're giving our economy right now a speedball. We have an economic speedball going on in this country right now. So we have our cocaine, we have our uppers, which is adding trillions of dollars into the economy to keep the lifeblood pumping on this thing. But that creates inflation, doesn't it? Uh-oh, now we need a downer because we're getting too high. So we bring our downer in, and that's a Fed coming out there and raising interest rates. Raising interest rates means borrowing somebody else's money is going to be more expensive for you. So that's a form of inflation. But the idea of raising rates is it's going to slow the speedball down from all the money that we're putting into our economy. So my question to you is, what is our policy? What is our fiscal policy right now? Are we going to be the upper or the downer? Because here's what I know. When we add money in, which creates inflation, only to raise rates to try to stave off inflation, we are sending our economy mixed messages. And just like John Belushi's heart, if we keep doing it, our economy is going to quit on us. And it almost feels like that's taking place right now.
Yeah, you've talked about a lot of things that we're going to unpack. But
Okay.
one exercise that we've done in the past, and I forget the exact numbers, but you blew my mind one day whenever you said $1 million correlation into seconds or days is X amount of time.
Yeah.
And then you take it to a trillion.
Yeah.
Because the trillion is like, oh, a trillion. Okay, it's a couple million, whatever, that number is. But whenever you look at it in seconds and days and months and years compared to one to each other, it's staggering how much of a shot of the, basically just extra funds went into our economy that 100% diluted our dollar. So
yeah, it's something to the tune. I'm getting it wrong, but you'll get the idea. It's something like this, like where a million seconds is 11 days. A billion seconds is like 28 years, and a trillion seconds is 28,000 years. I mean, that's it's the difference between a billion and a trillion is a remarkable number. And I'll just tell you this kind of on a side note here, Shawn, is when I started doing this back in 2007 and really kind of looking at where our economy is as it pertains to real estate and mortgage lending, it was shocking to me to see bailouts in the billions. Oh my God, we gave them $3 billion. Like it was like this is not sustainable. Oh, then we had our TARP and our HARP. It's like that's $200 billion. My God, what is going on? This is crazy. We're throwing around the term trillions a decade later, like we were doing billions. Yeah. And the thing is that it sounds like it's an eventuality step up. Oh, billions, trillions. Yeah, that kind of makes sense. Inflation. Oh, whatever. No, the difference between billions and trillions is night and day. 28 years, 28,000 years difference.
Yeah. It's nuts. Well, let's talk about inflation, because last month we were saying, the inflation number came out of 7.5%, and we're like, oh my goodness, it's the highest it's been since 1982. This is crazy. This is crazy. But of course, you touched on Ukraine and Russia. We have oil being affected. This is accelerating our inflation number up into the tune of like almost 7.9%, which right now we've been hearing interest rates from last November to today just going up and up and up and up, which are still good, relatively speaking. People are so spoiled over the past couple of years, but still that from going from the 2s to the 4s, within a couple of months, people freak out. I don't know when this ends, because I was hoping I was going to be reporting good news today that, hey, inflation curve, we're at the top and we're going down. That's not the case. And, inventory is getting less, inflation's going up. Oh, our pets' heads are falling off. What else is going on? What is that?
That's filling up my gas tank yesterday.
$135.
$135.
Good. No big deal. Chump change, right?
625 where we're at right now.
Oh my goodness.
625, and we're certainly on the rise. But I'll tell you, this is all the best lessons I've learned about myself in real estate, how I conduct myself professionally. I learned all of my lessons in hard markets. I've never learned anything in a good market. A good market teaches you how to be entitled and teaches you that laziness pays off.
Yep.
Hard markets is where you really learn how to grind and hustle. And those tough lessons are the ones that stick with you for the rest of your life. So there's part of me that kind of says, as a real estate agent right now, is let's not wake up and, oh, woe is me, this stuff. Let's wake up and embrace it. Just embrace the pain. Seriously, embrace the pain. These are the markets where you'll learn your lessons. These are the markets when things do turn. If you can get through hard markets and things get easier and you've got a hard market work ethic, you'll destroy it, and everything's cyclical. I mean, you'll just kill it in a great market. So embrace the pain right now. That's part of it. The other thing is people are still buying and selling real estate. Everybody, I remember when we had 16 and 18% interest rates, people were still buying houses. Yeah, they certainly were. And they're certainly going to, no matter what the market is. And our inventory is going to get turned. And some agent has to go ahead and list it. And some agent has to bring a buyer to it. You just need to be the one. Here's the whole thing as a real estate agent. All you need to do is be better than the person to the right and left of you. All you have to do is out hustle them. It's really that simple. If you can do that effectively, you'll have a great career in real estate, but you got to wake up with that hustle attitude. So I don't know, Jeff, I'm kind of with you on this. It's like, we want to provide great news, but maybe the great news is there's a bunch of good lessons about to be learned out there right now.
Yeah, and I told all of my loan officers that this is the time when you have to sharpen your skill set and be better, or you're going to be in the great purge whenever you're getting out and selling, phones at the mall or something like that. So I 100% agree with you. It's amazing how easy it was whenever rates were so damn good. Everybody was calling you, but yeah, definitely you definitely have to run your business as you're running your business and get after it for sure. So let's talk about interest rates. You said short-term Fed's meeting right now, next couple days, and they are going to be raising the short-term rate by 0.25% to try and head off inflation. They're also talking about how much more are they going to raise it throughout the year. They're probably talking about if they're going to start selling off some of the assets because the Treasury is buying mortgage-backed securities. This is why the rates are still where they're at. If they weren't doing this, rates would 6s, 7s, if they weren't really purchasing the amount that they were purchasing. So now they're talking about, hey, our book is way too big. We need to unload some of this off the balance sheet, and then that will negatively affect interest rates. So I guess it could be very volatile, and I don't want to be doom as gloom here, but in the next coming days, especially whenever they talk on it on Wednesday, I mean, we could see some really, really big movement depending on the vernacular that they choose to communicate with us.
Yeah, and it's when we talk about the Fed balance sheet, and I think what are they buying? Is it $30 billion in mortgage-backed securities, like on a quarterly or a monthly basis?
No big deal.
The numbers asked or on a monthly basis is what they're buying.
Yeah.
So they're buying 30 billion on a monthly basis, and they've been doing this for years now. So you kind of think the Fed balance sheet, it's like, okay, well, that fluctuates, kind of like the United States debt, right? Mm-hmm. Well, we know we have a debt, we know it's a big debt, and so when you hear billions, we're just adding to a already big number. The Feds didn't have a balance sheet a decade ago. They didn't even have one. Yeah. Like, what was their balance sheet? Their balance sheet was zero. So we go from zero to buying $30 billion, $45 billion a month in mortgage-backed securities. That's a big number, guys. The Fed is the primary purchaser of mortgage-backed securities in this country. They're the ones who are keeping liquidity moving in the mortgage market. They want private money to come back in, but until it does in droves, it's going to be the Fed that's buying these mortgage-backed securities. And by the way, when they buy those mortgage-backed securities, what that's doing is that's effectively keeping rates lower than what they otherwise would be. So imagine the Fed says, all right, we're not going to buy $30 billion in mortgage-backed securities. Okay, well, now I have these notes I want to sell at 3%. And got any takers? 3.5%. Got any takers? Investors are looking at this and saying, for the amount of risk and the amount of interest that I'm getting paid on that, it's not worth it. Oh shit. Okay, what about 4.5%? Do I got takers at 4.5%? Maybe a couple. What about 5.5%? Do I got anyone taking at 5.5%? Yeah, now more. What about 6.5%? Okay, now, all right, so we're going to double what I'm going to make off this. Okay, I'll get off the fence and I'll start buying mortgage-backed securities. It's essentially how the whole thing's going to work, like an auction. And so if it was private money who's going to dictate where interest rates would be, Jeff or Shawn, I think you're right. I think we'd probably be sitting somewhere in the 5s, 6s, or 7s. And when you consider that you lose 5% purchasing power for every 0.5% in rate, what happens if we go up 3%? What does that do for somebody's purchasing power? You're down 20, 30, 40%. Okay, now your average buyer can go ahead and afford 30, 40% less of what they already can't afford. What does that do with the prices and the properties? When rates go up, here's what in the market we're at right now is the buyers have to go up to meet the seller's price. That's the market we're in. The buyers have to come up here and meet it. That's why everybody's bidding over asking price on these properties. Mm-hmm. If the market changes and rates go up by 3%, what's going to happen is the sellers are going to have to come down and meet the buyer's price. And that means property values, they actually decrease. Again, we always view this as a bad thing. If gas prices go down, does anyone say, well, that's horrible? No. If we just found out tomorrow that the 5 Series BMWs were going for $15,000 a piece, would anyone say that's a bad thing? No. Well, if you're in the market to buy one, if you're in the market to sell a reused one, it kind of stinks for you. But can we all agree right now that homeowners have become fat, rich, and happy with all the equity that they've gained over the past couple of years? It's probably more than they deserve. And if it was to come down and even they were to lose half that equity, they still made out like bandits. And it brings affordability back to keep the lifeblood of the United States economy churning. And that's when people buy and sell houses. But yeah, rates right now, a long-winded way of saying this, they're going to go up. The Fed's talking about 3 more rate hikes before year's end. They're very, very bullish on rate hikes right now. And the thinking is this is how we're going to finally get inflation under control by constantly raising rates. Again, mixed messages, all these bailouts that we're still giving, we are telling our economy to speed up and slow down at the same breath. And I find that to be the most troubling thing that we're looking at.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Hold on. Hold on for
Hey,
the
listen,
ride.
listen, the alternative is global thermal nuclear war.
Yeah. No one hit any buttons for
Right now. Shawn, aren't you actually going, okay, where's the comet?
Yeah.
All right, where's the comet? Come on.
Hail Bob coming back around to take us out. One thing that you guys on your show this morning, you were talking about Walmart and Lender One teaming up. Now we all can, kind of make some funnies about your shopping experience at Walmart, or, oh, great, that's another vendor that I need to avoid whenever I walk through the front door. Who you get your TV or your cell phone service from? Who do you get your mortgage from? Great. All right. But you were on the other side of this saying that this is actually a pretty smart move for Lender One, just due to the sheer size of the amount of folks that come through the door, and then some of the stats on the clientele makeup as far as credit and also income potential of these clients. So I'll go ahead and let you explain what you talked about this morning.
Yeah, everybody and everything, we need to start looking at it as databases. A good marketer is going to work their database. A great marketer is going to find other databases to work. One thing we all collectively have in common, I've said it before, is we all like to sleep with a roof over our head, not a freeway overpass. Like when night comes, give me an actual roof, comp roof, 40-year shingle, 3-tab, whatever it is, shake roof, I don't care, tile roof, but I want it to be an actual roof, not a freeway overpass. And so if we can accept that as a truth, then we just need to find where people, where they go. Where do we spend our time, and where do we spend our money, and how can we get in front of people when they're constantly turning the carousel? Mm-hmm. Well, is there a bigger and better carousel out there in the country right now than Walmart? How many people go into Walmarts? How many Walmarts are there? I'm talking actual physical locations where you can bump into people and say, I do mortgages or I sell real estate for a living. I don't think you could find a more effective place than Walmart. So the joke was, all right, well, I've seen the videos. Not safe for work videos like people in Walmart. It's crazy stuff. Mm-hmm. So it's like, okay, this is going to be fun to kind of goof around with. And I started looking up some of the stats on your average Walmart shopper. Well, here's the thing. I was at Walmart last week. I had to go there to get a cylinder converter for my propane. Walmart was the only place that had it. I can go there and get a loaf of bread, a cylinder converter, a gun, a loaf of bread, a pair of pants, a baby monitor. And cheaper than anywhere else. So it turns out that your average Walmart shopper on the most recent survey makes $80,000 a year. Your average individual in this country is making less than $40,000 a year. Your average self-employed person is making $60,000 a year. So if you were to believe these analytics, your average Walmart shopper is doing better than your average citizen or your average self-employed citizen. $80,000 is a pretty good number. What the article was suggesting is that, well, if you use 30% of your prevailing interest rates, if you use 30% of your income as your principal, interest, tax, and insurance payment, that means you're going to be able to afford $390,000, which isn't going to put you in many houses across the country. The truth of the matter is whoever wrote that article doesn't do loans, because you're going to get that top end ratio, your housing expense ratio, up to 35%, which is going to put you at about 410, 415. Mm-hmm. And now when you look at a 410, 415 sales price, you're cooking with hot bacon grease once again. Mm-hmm. So it's a very shrewd move on lenders' choice to go ahead and get access to that Walmart database. It really is. The question then becomes is what's the cost? It could be a shrewd move if they got in there reasonably inexpensively. It could be a bad move if they got in there very expensively. Do you remember when it was, I think it was it Remax who inked that deal? No, it was Realogy who inked that deal with Amazon. And remember, Amazon's stock went or Realogy stock went through the roof. Yeah. And then once people saw the terms of the condition, the next day they went tanked. Yeah, because basically the Realogy was financing everything, and Amazon was basically fleecing the Realogy brands, and so you don't really hear about that relationship. So if they inked a good contract, having access to the Walmart database is remarkable. Again, it got me back to the whole idea of databases. What's in it for you if you're a realtor or lender watching this right now? Well, how many places are there where you could go ahead and access somebody else's database? I mean, I brought up the idea of a grocery store. Well, yes, certainly there's grocery stores. We see these, in the front of grocery stores. You could space rent out there. That's a database of people going in and out. Look at the small independent shops and businesses where you work right now, and what their turnstile looks like. Do they have a lot of business going through there? There's opportunity there for you as well. And what makes it interesting is that as a mortgage lender, I could go ahead and pay Walmart whatever I want to, and that is not a RESPA violation. If I pay a realtor for a referral, that's a RESPA violation. Yeah. Isn't it interesting? Because me as a lender, I'm spending money to get business to come to me. The concern is that if I'm spending money to go find business, the money that I'm spending, I'm going to offset that by charging people higher interest rates. So I can go ahead and have you, my unsuspecting new client, finance the cost of my marketing over the next 30 years of your mortgage. And that's the no-no here. But what's the difference between Walmart and working with a real estate agent? Well, effectively nothing when it comes to what the overall goal is. But from a lender standpoint, I can go ahead and work with different databases that are not called licensed real estate agents, and I can fly underneath the RESPA radar. So it's kind of an interesting way of looking at it there. What I would kind of consider doing if I was a lender and a realtor is I would think about pairing up and looking at opportunity for space rents in different areas and seeing if you can drum up business. Because let's get back to this conversation, be cyclical about it. We lack inventory. Doesn't mean people don't want to sell their houses. It doesn't mean they're not going to sell their houses. It simply means they haven't done it yet. But there's a lot of people who are looking at the bell curve right now and saying, are we at the top of the market? Because that's what I want to sell. So rather than trying to take a slice of a pie that already exists, when you go and like what Lender's Choice is doing over here with Walmart, when you find access to these other databases and you can get in front of people and you have your talking points, you can actually manufacture listing opportunities where they simply didn't exist before. So rather than getting a slice of a pie that already exists, you're baking your own cake over here. You're baking your own pie. And by the way, happy Pie Day. You're baking your own pie on Pie Day today, and you're creating your own opportunities. So I think there's really something to that. If for a lender and a realtor, lenders and realtors right now, we need to really start thinking about how we can get creative with our marketing opportunities. Because, I mean, Shawn, we're going to have to tighten our belts, these next couple of years. And creative and hard marketing real estate agents and lenders are going to win the day.
For sure, for sure. Lastly, we're going to talk about CRAs. So 1977 Community Reinvestment Act was passed. This is why your local depository lenders, your local banks, and also big boy banks that take in, checking, savings accounts, whatever, they have these programs to help with the local community reinvestment. And the reason why it was passed in 1977 is that a lot of banks were redlining. What redlining is they look on the map. This is the bad part of town, red marker. We are not lending in here, no matter if this person has an 800 credit score with $1 million in the bank. We're not lending in that part because that is the bad part of town, and we don't want that asset. That is 100% against the law. So they come out with the CRAs. There are talk that they're trying to make it to where non-depository lenders, so your correspondent lenders and also your brokers, they're wanting us to follow those same rules. But what's interesting is whenever you look at the numbers on who's actually providing services to those underserved communities, the non-depository lenders are actually beating the banks with the CRAs. So I don't know, you always say trust in thy government, or basically making fun a little bit, but why in the hell would they want to change something or make something whenever we're already doing a better job, in my opinion?
Yeah, it's Ronald Reagan. The scariest words in the English language are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. I do find this I find this ironic and funny. This really is kind of my sense of humor, because I just, whatever the public sector does, government does, the private sector generally does better. This is no exception. The idea with the Community Reinvestment Act that was passed in 77 was we're interested in not how you get there, but we're interested in results. We need you to lend more money into underserved communities and communities of color. Like, that's what we're going to do. But we're only going to regulate the depository banks. Now, in case a depository is exactly what it implies. It's a bank where you can accept deposits. Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Chase, Citibank. You put your money in there, you get your checking account, your ATM, and all that stuff. Well, they also do mortgages. Then you have your non-depository banks. Your non-depository banks are going to be like Quicken. It would be the big one that everyone will know. You can't go put a deposit into Quicken, but Quicken just strictly does mortgages. Or your mortgage brokers, there's no deposits there. Or your independent mortgage banker, there's no deposits there. Basically, most of the people, or if you're watching this right now on LabCoatAgents, most of the lenders that you're working with right now are going to be non-depository banks, non-depository lenders, because they generally do a better job and they do it at a lower interest rate. Well, they always do a better job and do it at a lower interest rate. So these are the two differences. And then credit unions, but we're going to lump the credit unions who take deposits in with the independent mortgage bankers and the mortgage brokers as non-depositories. And those three are not governed by the CRA laws, the Community Reinvestment Act laws. So this has been passed in 1977 to get lenders to go into underserved communities and lend more money there. So I thought it was interesting where you have the unregulated non-banks and brokers. When it comes to low to moderate income neighborhoods or neighborhoods of color, 26.4% of the loans written by non-banks and brokers were to neighborhoods of color and low to moderate income or in underserved communities. When it comes to depositories, it was only 22%. So the unregulated group of lenders actually did 4.2% more loans than the highly regulated banks. When it comes to middle income neighborhoods, 6.5% non-banks, unregulated, 3.7% regulated banks. When it comes to upper income neighborhoods, 3.5% unregulated banks, non-banks, and 1.9% regulated depositories. When we combined all of these neighborhoods together, 9% of the unregulated non-depository independent mortgage banker and brokers, and 5.6% of the highly regulated depository banks. So no matter how we slice and dice it, and by the way, just real quickly, this is percentages, okay? So not only are non-banks writing more loans, but they're doing a higher percentage. That's the big one, a higher percentage to underserved communities and communities of color. Now, I find this interesting because you have the government going in there and now they're saying, well, we want to take mortgage brokers, independent mortgage bankers, and credit unions, and we want to put them under the jurisdiction of the CRA laws. And I'm over here saying, why would you do that? Because based on your results over a 40-year period, we are going to hurt minority communities more than we already have. And keep in mind, guys, we kind of say this with a snicker on our face, but the fact of the matter is there are fewer African Americans who own homes today than they did a decade ago. There are fewer African Americans who own homes today than there were during the time of Jim Crow laws back in the late 50s and early 60s. This is factually accurate, meaning everything that we have tried to do to really shrink that wealth gap as it pertains to real estate and owning real estate and trying to create something that looks like generational wealth has failed miserably. Now, what we need to do is I think we need to reconsider how we're approaching the epidemic, and it really is an epidemic of generational wealth as it pertains to different ethnicities. We need to do something, but what we're doing right now is failing miserably, and we don't need to look any further than the Community Reinvestment Act and what's happened with it over the past 40 years. Literally, lenders who are not regulated by the government are doing a better job at the goals and objectives of CRA than the actual CRA. I'm from the government. I'm here to help. Yikes.
Well, we do have somebody in the comments, and I don't know because I'm not in California, but Mr. Dennis Newell is saying California is also going after flippers, proposing a capital gains tax of 25% on any homes that are sold within 3 years. And then also California has a bill in the assembly that will do away with bulk sales prior to be given to public agencies and individuals for 30 days. I don't know. Do you have any info or any thoughts on those?
Well, I certainly like the second half of that. I mean, that makes sense to me. These bulk sales, they don't serve our communities well. They simply don't. We go from communities of homeowners to communities of renters, and there are study after study after study that tells you when you have higher numbers of renters, and nothing against renting, but when you have higher numbers of renters, the rest of the community tends to not do as well. And these numbers are very, it's when ownership goes down, it's like a teeter-totter. When ownership goes down, it is directly proportional to crime levels and vandalism. I mean, it's pretty much like that. So I love that idea. When it comes to flippers, I'd have to kind of think about this for a few minutes, but I'm not Yeah, well, first of all, I think any new taxes as a principle is a bad idea, especially in California, the most highly taxed state in the union. If they can, and by the way, strangely enough, the most indebted state, the more money we get, the deeper in debt we go.
I have no idea how that happens.
Oh, it's crazy. And by the way, and you look at Arizona, Arizona has no debt whatsoever. Everything in the state of Arizona, the weather, the animals, the plants, the people, they all have spikes, fangs, and, and venom, and everything wants to kill you in Arizona. Yet they have no debt and their economy is going fantastically. In California, where everything's fairly, pretty nice out. I mean, it's 72 again. And we collect more taxes than anybody, and we find ourselves in debt. So taxes in general, I'm not a real big fan of. I think they need to figure out what they're doing here. But I don't like these investors coming in here and flipping all the houses. We simply don't need that. But I mean, who am I to determine the direction the market needs to go?
Yeah, well, I'm sure next month's show is going to be fun, talking about the Fed and everything, inflation and everything else. Unfortunately, it's going to be a little bit of a broken record, but this is very, very fluid. So we're definitely going to be talking about it.
No. Next time it's going to be all right. So the comet is now 3 months, 2 days,
We can see it.
4 hours out. It's the size of Manhattan, and it's coming at us at 47,000 miles an hour. It's called an Ellie event. It's an extinction level event is going to hit us here.
Yeah, just watch Armageddon. We're sending the drilling team up. That we're going to blow this thing out. Everything's going to be fine, and we're going to be listening to.
Where's Bruce Willis when you need him?
Yeah. All right, my man. Well, this has been fun. I will see you next month, and be safe and enjoy your 70-degree weather. I'm not jealous at all here in the middle of the United States.
Hey, well, I hope to see you guys soon. Go out there and get me one of them good sandwiches again, buddy.
All right, buddy.
We'll
I'll talk to you. Bye-bye.
All right, ciao.